Discovering that electrical outlets have been moved after the rough-in inspection is a situation that requires careful handling. The first step is to contact the owner or builder and inform them of the situation. Explain that you've discovered the outlets were moved and express your concern. It's crucial to have open communication from the start. The second step is to verify the changes that were made. Inspect the outlets in question and thoroughly document the changes. Take pictures or videos as evidence. Note the new locations of the outlets compared to the original marked locations. The third step involves reviewing the inspection certificate for the rough-in. Confirm that the outlets were not moved at the time of inspection. This establishes a baseline and confirms that the changes occurred after the initial approval. The fourth step is to assess the impact of the moved outlets. Determine whether the new locations affect the functionality or safety of the electrical system. Consider potential code violations such as improper spacing of outlets or any electrical hazards that might arise from the altered wiring. The fifth step is to discuss options with the owner or builder. Several solutions can be considered. Firstly, verify the reason for the changes and consider moving the outlets back to their original locations, aligning with the approved electrical plan. Secondly, consider repurposing the moved outlets for different functions or lighting circuits if that aligns with the current design and electrical code. Thirdly, adding additional outlets to meet the electrical code requirements can be an option if the moved outlets created a deficiency in the original plan. The sixth step is to document the agreement that you come to with the owner or builder. Once a solution is agreed upon, document it in writing. This could be a revised electrical plan or a formal change order. A written agreement protects all parties involved. The seventh step is to revise the electrical plan. If necessary, update the electrical plan to reflect the new outlet locations and any other changes that were agreed upon. Make sure the revised plan is approved by the relevant authorities if required. The eighth step is to complete the trim-out work according to the agreed upon and documented plan. Ensure that all work is performed to code and with safety as the highest priority. There are additional considerations to take into account. Safety should always be the highest priority. Ensure that all electrical work is performed by a licensed electrician and that all safety precautions are followed. Secondly, be aware of the codes and standards that are applicable to the electrical system. Ensure that the electrical system complies with all applicable electrical codes and standards, including the National Electrical Code or any local amendments. Thirdly, you need to maintain clear and open communication with the owner or builder throughout the process. This helps to avoid misunderstandings and ensures that everyone is on the same page. It is important to keep detailed records of all inspections, changes, and agreements to provide accountability and protect all parties. This documentation can be useful in case of any disputes or future issues. When assessing the impact of moving the outlets, it is important to consider several factors. Firstly, the National Electrical Code, or NEC, specifies requirements for the spacing of receptacles and dwelling units to ensure that lamps and appliances can be used conveniently without the use of extension cords. Section 210.52 A1 states that in every kitchen, family room, dining room, living room, parlor, library, den, sunroom, bedroom, recreation room, or similar room or area of dwelling unit, receptacle outlet shall be installed so that no point along the floor line in any wall space is more than 6 feet, measured horizontally from an outlet in that space, including any wall space 2 feet or more in width than the wall space occupied by fixed panels in exterior walls, but excluding sliding panels. This generally means that receptacles should be placed no more than 12 feet apart along walls. If the moved outlets violate this spacing requirement, additional outlets may be needed. Secondly, the NEC also addresses the placement of receptacles in specific areas, such as kitchens and bathrooms. In kitchens, section 210.52. C requires receptacle outlets to be installed at each countertop wall space that is 12 inches or wider. Receptacles must also be placed within 2 feet of a sink. If the moved outlets do not comply with these requirements, adjustments are necessary. For bathrooms, section 210.52. D requires at least one receptacle outlet to be installed within 3 feet of each lavatory basin. These receptacles must also have ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, protection. If the moved outlets do not meet these requirements, they must be corrected. Thirdly, the type of wiring used and its ampacity must be considered. If the original wiring was suitable for the originally planned outlets, moving the outlets might create situations where the wiring is no longer adequate. For example, if the moved outlets are now further away from the panel, the voltage drop could be excessive, or if they are on a different circuit, the circuit could be overloaded. Tables 310.15, B16 and 310.16 in the NEC provide guidance on the allowable ampacities of insulated conductors based on their size and insulation type. It's important to ensure that the wiring is properly sized for the intended load and that voltage drop is within acceptable limits, typically not more than 3% for branch circuits, as recommended in Informational Note No. 1 to Section 210.19, A1. Fourthly, consider any dedicated circuits that were originally planned for specific appliances or equipment. If the moved outlets were intended for dedicated circuits, such as those for refrigerators, dishwashers, or microwave ovens, ensure that the circuits are still dedicated and that the moved outlets are properly connected. Section 210.11. C of the NEC requires dedicated circuits for certain appliances to prevent overloading and ensure proper operation. Fifthly, ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, and arc fault circuit interrupter, or RFSI, protection should be considered. The NEC requires GFCI protection in certain locations such as bathrooms, kitchens, and at door areas to protect against electrical shock. RFSI protection is required for most branch circuits supplying outlets in dwelling units to protect against electrical fires caused by arcing faults. If the moved outlets are in areas where GFCI or RFSI protection is required, ensure that the necessary protection is in place. The sixth consideration is the accessibility and clearances around the outlets. Section 110.26 of the NEC specifies requirements for working space around electrical equipment, including outlets. Ensure that the moved outlets have adequate clearances for access and maintenance. Consider whether furniture or other obstructions might block access to the outlets, which could be a safety hazard. The seventh consideration is the local codes and amendments. Local jurisdictions may have additional requirements or amendments to the NEC that must be followed. It is important to check with the local building department or electrical inspector to ensure that the moved outlets comply with all applicable codes and regulations. When documenting the agreement with the owner or builder, several key elements should be included to ensure clarity and legal protection. Firstly, identify all parties involved, including the homeowner or builder, the electrical contractor, and any other relevant parties. Include their full legal names, addresses, and contact information. Secondly, clearly describe the original electrical plan. Reference the original electrical plan or blueprint that was approved during the initial inspection. Specify the locations of the outlets that were moved and any other relevant details. Thirdly, document the changes that were made. Describe the changes that were made to the electrical system, including the new locations of the outlets and any modifications to the wiring or circuits. Include photographs or diagrams to illustrate the changes. Fourthly, state the reasons for the changes. Explain the reasons why the outlets were moved. Was it due to architectural changes, design preferences, or other factors? Include any relevant documentation or correspondence that supports the reasons for the changes. Fifthly, include a detailed description of the agreed-upon solution. Clearly outline the agreed-upon solution for addressing the moved outlets. Will the outlets be moved back to their original locations repurposed for different functions, or will additional outlets be added? Specify who is responsible for performing the work and any associated costs. Sixthly, specify code compliance. State that all work will be performed in accordance with applicable electrical codes and standards, including the NEC and any local amendments. Include a provision that the electrical contractor will obtain any necessary permits and inspections. Seventhly, address liability and insurance. Include a clause that addresses liability for any damages or injuries that may result from the changes to the electrical system. State that the electrical contractor will maintain adequate insurance coverage to protect against any potential claims. Eighthly, include a payment schedule. Specify the payment schedule for the work, including the total cost, any deposits or progress payments, and the final payment upon completion. Ninthly, include a change order. Use a change order form to document the changes to the electrical plan. The change order should include all of the information mentioned above, as well as signatures from all parties involved. And tenthly, obtain signatures and dates. Have all parties involved sign and date the agreement to indicate their consent. Make sure that each party receives a copy of the signed agreement for their records. When revising the electrical plan, it's crucial to ensure accuracy and compliance with all applicable codes and standards. This process typically involves several steps. Firstly, update the plan with the new outlet locations. Use the original electrical plan as a base and update it with the new outlet locations. Clearly mark the new locations and indicate any changes to the wiring or circuits. Secondly, verify code compliance. Ensure that the revised electrical plan complies with all applicable electrical codes and standards, including the NEC and any local amendments. Pay close attention to receptacle spacing requirements, GFCI and FSI protection, and wiring ampacity. Thirdly, consult with an electrical inspector. Consider consulting with an electrical inspector to review the revised electrical plan and ensure that it meets all requirements. The inspector can provide valuable feedback and guidance on code compliance. Fourthly, obtain necessary permits. Obtain any necessary permits from the local building department before proceeding with the electrical work. The permit process typically involves submitting the revised electrical plan for review and paying a permit fee. Fifthly, perform a load calculation. Perform a load calculation to ensure that the electrical system can handle the additional load from the moved outlets. The load calculation should take into account the size of the service entrance, the capacity of the panel board, and the ampacity of the branch circuits. Sixthly, consider future expansion. Consider the potential for future expansion when revising the electrical plan. If there is a possibility that additional outlets or circuits will be needed in the future, plan accordingly to avoid having to make costly changes later on. Seventhly, document all changes. Keep detailed records of all changes made to the electrical plan, including the reasons for the changes and any supporting documentation. This documentation can be useful in case of any disputes or future issues. Eighthly, use a professional. Consider hiring a qualified electrical designer or engineer to revise the electrical plan. A professional can ensure that the plan is accurate, code compliant, and optimized for performance and safety. When completing the trim-out work, several best practices should be followed to ensure a safe and professional installation. Firstly, turn off the power. Always turn off the power to the circuit before working on any electrical components. Use a voltage tester to verify that the power is off. Secondly, inspect the wiring. Inspect the wiring for any damage or defects. Replace any damaged or worn wires. Thirdly, use proper connectors. Use proper connectors for all electrical connections. Ensure that the connectors are properly sized for the wire gauge and that they are securely fastened. Fourthly, ground all outlets. Ground all outlets properly to protect against electrical shock. The grounding wire should be connected to the grounding terminal on the outlet and to the grounding busbar in the panel board. Fifthly, test all outlets. Test all outlets with a receptacle tester to ensure that they are properly wired and grounded. The receptacle tester will indicate whether the hot, neutral, and ground wires are connected correctly. Sixthly, label all circuits. Label all circuits in the panel board to identify the outlets and appliances that they serve. This will make it easier to troubleshoot any electrical problems in the future. Seventhly, use GFCI protection. Use ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, protection in areas where required by code, such as bathrooms, kitchens, and outdoor areas. GFCI outlets will protect against electrical shock by detecting ground faults and shutting off the power to the circuit. Eighthly, use of PSI protection. Use arc fault circuit interrupter or PSI protection on branch circuits supplying outlets and dwelling units to protect against electrical fires caused by arcing faults. PSI breakers will detect arcing faults and shut off the power to the circuit. Ninthly, follow manufacturer's instructions. Follow the manufacturer's instructions for installing all electrical components. This will ensure that the components are installed correctly and that they will perform as intended. And tenthly, obtain an inspection. Obtain an inspection from the local building department after completing the trim-out work. The inspector will verify that the electrical work was performed in accordance with applicable codes and standards. When maintaining clear and open communication with the owner or builder, it is important to be proactive, transparent, and responsive. This involves several key strategies. Firstly, schedule regular meetings. Schedule regular meetings with the owner or builder to discuss the progress of the electrical work and any issues that may arise. These meetings can be held in person, by phone, or via video conference. Secondly, provide written updates. Provide written updates to the owner or builder on a regular basis. These updates should include a summary of the work that has been completed, any problems that have been encountered, and any changes that have been made to the electrical plan. Thirdly, respond promptly to inquiries. Respond promptly to any inquiries from the owner or builder. If you are unable to answer a question immediately, let them know that you will get back to them as soon as possible. Fourthly, be transparent about costs. Be transparent about the costs of the electrical work. Provide the owner or builder with a detailed breakdown of the costs, including labor, materials, and any other expenses. Fifthly, document all communications. Document all communications with the owner or builder in writing. This includes meeting minutes, emails, and any other correspondence. This documentation can be useful in case of any disputes or future issues. Sixthly, be professional. Maintain a professional demeanor at all times when communicating with the owner or builder. Avoid using jargon or technical terms that they may not understand. Seventhly, be respectful. Be respectful of the owner or builder's opinions and concerns. Listen carefully to their feedback and address their concerns promptly. Eighthly, be proactive in identifying and addressing potential problems. Proactively identify and address any potential problems that may arise during the electrical work. This will help to prevent delays and minimize disruptions. Ninthly, seek clarification when needed. Seek clarification from the owner or builder when needed. If you are unsure about something, don't hesitate to ask for clarification. And tenthly, be a team player. Work as a team with the owner or builder to ensure that the electrical work is completed successfully. This requires collaboration, communication, and a willingness to compromise.